Somewhere between post-war Britain and today, we forgot how to feed ourselves. Not because the food disappeared, because we stopped trusting it. These 20 meals cost almost nothing, take under 10 minutes, and kept an entire generation nourished, warm, and dignified. Subscribe before we start, because what follows might change how you eat tonight. Number 20. Sardines on toast. A tin of sardines at Aldi costs around 99 pence. Hold that against a supermarket ready meal and ask yourself what we have actually gained in 50 years. District nurses in the 1960s recommended sardines on toast to elderly patients because it needed no real cooking, no washing up, and delivered more genuine nourishment than most hot meals twice the price. Mash onto generously buttered toast with a squeeze of lemon. 5 minutes from cupboard to plate. The soft bones dissolved in canning feed calcium into a body that needs it. The omega-3 oils ease joints that have spent decades in service. The protein carries you until morning. The food industry spent years suggesting tinned fish was inferior. It was not inferior. It was just too cheap to build a premium around, so it was quietly sidelined in favor of things that could be marked up and marketed. We walked away from this and called it progress. It wasn't. But that's nothing compared to what the next generation of health advice quietly removed from our plates. Number 19. Boiled egg and toast soldiers. 3 minutes soft, 4 medium, 5 hard. Every cook in post-war Britain knew those numbers by heart. The fact that most people under 40 have to look them up tells you everything about what was lost in the transition to convenience. 1 egg, 1 slice of toast, a knob of butter, 7 minutes total. Slice the top off, dip the soldiers into the yolk, eat slowly. Nutritionally complete in a way that most things sold in plastic packaging with health claims on the front simply are not. Modern ultra-processed meals are engineered for shelf life and profit margin. A boiled egg is engineered by nothing except nature. What this gave people eating alone was more than protein. It gave the evening a shape, a reason to sit down and mark the end of the day with something warm and deliberate. That small ritual kept people anchored when solitude threatened to dissolve all routine entirely. This next meal took those same ingredients and turned them into something that felt like proper cooking. Number 18. Welsh rarebit. Not cheese on toast. The two things are not the same, and anyone who grew up in a proper British household could tell you so firmly. Grate cheddar into a small pan with milk, a teaspoon of mustard, and a shake of Worcestershire sauce. Stir over low heat until smooth and glossy. Pour over toast and grill until the edges bubble and brown. 7 minutes. A completely different meal from a sad slice of cheese melting unevenly under a grill. Welsh rarebit appeared in economical cookbooks throughout the 1950s as the ideal quick supper for one. The mustard supported digestion in ways nobody talked about, but everyone felt. The Worcestershire sauce added a depth that made the whole thing feel chosen rather than assembled from leftovers. Eating alone never required eating carelessly. The generation who made this understood that. We replaced it with microwavable cheese portions in plastic trays and called it convenience. And yet the most comforting meal on this list is also the one that required the least investment to make. Number 17. Tin tomato soup with bread and butter. Heinz tomato soup heated and thinned with a little milk to make it go further. 2 thick slices of bread spread generously with real butter. Dinner for millions of Britons in the 1960s, and not a drop of shame in any of it. The ritual was the point, the sound of it coming to the boil, the steam, the first dip of buttered bread into that bright orange warmth. Doctors observing elderly patients noted those who maintained proper meal. Rituals, sitting at a table without the television on, fared far better than those who grazed from the kitchen counter. The soup gave the meal structure. The structure gave the evening meaning. At around 170 pence a tin today, it still produces something no chilled ready meal at 4 times the price quite manages to replicate. If soup gave the evening structure, the next meal gave the body something modern alternatives consistently failed to deliver. Number 16. Mackerel on toast. Tinned mackerel forked straight onto toast, a few drops of malt vinegar or a wedge of lemon alongside. 5 minutes. The smell alone signals to your body that something real is coming. Mackerel carries more omega-3 per gram than fresh salmon. The B12 protects the nervous system at an age when that can no longer be assumed. What replaced it in the modern diet was low-fat spreads, refined carbohydrates, and unstable vegetable oils that break down under heat, stripping nutritional value in processing and then selling it back separately as supplements. So many older adults today are skipping proper meals because cooking alone feels like too much effort for too little reward. That feeling is understandable. It is also one of the quietest nutritional crises playing out across Britain right now. Tinned mackerel on toast is not a workaround. It is a direct answer, on the shelf well under 100 pence. Now pay attention, because the next one needs almost nothing and still manages to feel like a treat. Number 15. Eggy bread. 1 egg beaten with a splash of milk. 2 slices of bread soaked through. Fried in butter until golden on both sides. 5 minutes. French people call it pain perdu. British grandmothers made it without ceremony on evenings when the fridge was nearly empty, and anything complicated felt impossible. Savoury with salt and pepper, it was a proper supper. With a spoon of jam, it became something close to an occasion. The cost was almost nothing. The result was the deep satisfaction that only hot food made with real butter delivers. Real butter, incidentally, is exactly what decades of low-fat marketing convinced people to swap for processed vegetable spreads that were neither cheaper nor more nutritious. There are people in Britain going to bed hungry tonight, not because they cannot afford an egg and 2 slices of bread, but because nobody told them this counted. It always did. But here is what most people forgot. Some of the best meals require no flame whatsoever. Number 14. Cheese and onion on crusty bread. No cooking, no heat, no standing if your legs have already done enough today. Thick, mature cheddar over raw onion rings on a doorstep of crusty bread with a scrape of pickle from the jar. 2 minutes from fridge to table. In post-war Britain, this was not a snack. It was a meal, and a deeply satisfying one. Older women in the 1950s favoured cold suppers precisely because they could be assembled sitting down with nothing at risk of burning. The raw onion quietly nourished gut bacteria in ways science would not catch up with for decades. The cheddar gave real calcium the body absorbs readily. We traded this for supermarket deli counters selling pre-sliced processed cheese at a price several times higher, wrapped in plastic, destined for landfill. What comes next turns 5 minutes of butter and heat into something genuinely restorative. Number 13. Mushrooms on toast. Fresh mushrooms sliced and fried in butter for 5 minutes, seasoned well, piled onto toast. That is the whole of it. The smell of mushrooms browning in butter transforms a kitchen into somewhere you want to be. For older adults whose appetite has grown unreliable, that sensory pull matters more than any ingredient list. It draws you toward the meal rather than away from it, which is more than most sealed ready meal trays manage before you have even peeled back the film. What almost nobody talks about is that mushrooms are among the very few plant-based sources of vitamin D. In a country where weak winter sunlight leaves older adults deficient for months on end, a 60p pack of mushrooms does quiet, serious nutritional work that the supplement industry charges considerably more to replicate less effectively. What follows built an entire meal from 2 of the most overlooked ingredients in any British kitchen. Number 12. Potted meat on toast. Those small glass jars still sit on supermarket shelves. Shipham's beef paste, chicken spread, crab paste, under 100p each. 3 meals from 1 jar without trying. Spread thickly on hot toast, potted meat delivers concentrated, deeply savoury flavour without a single second at the hob. 1 jar, 1 loaf, 3 dinners. For someone on a fixed income, that arithmetic is not sentimental. Nothing to wash up beyond a knife. Nothing going off in the fridge because the portion was too large for 1 person. The processed food industry convinced a generation that real convenience came in a cardboard sleeve with a microwave symbol. It never did. It was sitting on the shelf in a glass jar for under 100p the entire time. What comes next turned 2 kitchen staples into a meal that manufacturers spent decades pretending did not qualify as dinner. Number 11. Scrambled eggs with chives. 2 eggs, a knob of butter, a splash of milk, dried chives if you have them. The only technique required is patience. Stir slowly over the gentlest heat possible. Pull the pan off before the eggs look ready. The warmth already in them does the rest. Scrambled eggs made quickly over high heat become rubbery and forgettable. Made slowly, they become soft, glossy, and rich enough that a slice of buttered toast beside them feels complete. The difference is not equipment, it is unhurried attention, which is something nobody is charging you for. Protein shortfall among older adults who eat alone is far more prevalent than most people realize. Not because these ingredients are hard to find, but because preparing a proper supper every evening with no one to cook for or sit opposite gradually stops feeling worth the effort. 2 eggs and 5 minutes of gentle stirring is worth it. Same egg, one method less, and somehow Britain's most quietly iconic quick dinner. Number 10. Baked beans on toast with a fried egg. Heinz baked beans on buttered toast was never lazy cooking. It was efficient cooking, and there has always been a meaningful difference between those two things. Heat the beans in a small pan, crack an egg into butter alongside, slide it on top when both are ready. Under 10 minutes, under 100 pence. The partial protein in the beans locks together with the complete protein of the egg to produce an amino acid profile that rivals a meat dish. This was not nutritional planning. It was simply what happened in British kitchens for decades before the food industry arrived to suggest the meal was not sophisticated enough. Millions ate this without apology because it was hot, filling, and real. That has not changed. If beans on toast fed a generation, the next meal fed the one before them, and the science behind it has only grown stronger. Number 9. Kipper from a jug. Place a kipper in a deep jug. Pour boiling water until the fish is covered. Rest a plate on top. Wait 5 minutes. Pat dry, finish with a small piece of butter. Eat with bread. No pan to scrub. No smoke. No smell settling into the curtains for days. Just a kettle and the willingness to let heat do the work without supervision. This was standard practice long before the grill became the default approach, and it solved every problem the grill creates without introducing a single new one. In the north of England and Scotland, where meaningful sunlight vanishes for months at a time, the vitamin D in a kipper does work that fortified cereals cannot match at the same biological depth. Processed fortification uses synthetic compounds. The form found in oily fish is what the body was built to absorb directly. What follows asks even less of you and carries a nutritional argument the 1980s diet industry actively suppressed. Number 8. Bread and dripping with a pinch of salt. Beef dripping saved from a Sunday joint was not poor food in the 1950s. It was a staple as unremarkable as butter itself. Spread thick on hot toast with flaked salt and a scrape of Marmite, it produced something warming, deeply satisfying, and packed with the fat-soluble nutrients that low-fat marketing spent 30 years removing from the British table. The rejection of animal fats in the 1980s was not driven by settled science. It was a hypothesis that suited the vegetable oil industry, gathered political weight, and became dietary law before the evidence supported it. Fats sourced from animals are essential for absorbing vitamins A, D, E, and K. The generation who ate dripping on toast without a second thought was, without any awareness of it, nourishing themselves properly. We were steered elsewhere. Most people never questioned it. Some things that look like stepping forward are the opposite. Now this is where things get interesting, because what follows needs no fat, no flame, and is still nutritionally formidable. Number 7. Corned beef sandwich with mustard. That blue labeled tin with the peculiar key on the side. Every person over 70 knows exactly what opening it involves and why you have to respect the process. Corned beef sliced thick and cold, nestled between bread with a generous smear of English mustard and a few rounds of pickled cucumber. No heating. One tin yields 4 generous portions. 4 dinners under 200 pence total, each assembled in under 5 minutes, each delivering real iron and real protein at a cost that makes any supermarket meal deal look extravagant. English mustard stimulates gastric acid output, which declines with age and is the overlooked reason older adults extract nutrition from food less efficiently than they once did. The people who reach for the mustard on instinct were compensating for something. The body gradually stops doing on its own. They had no idea they were right anyway. From one tin to a meal needing no tin whatsoever, the next one came back from abroad and settled permanently into British kitchens. Number 6. Tomato and bread salad. Ripe tomatoes sliced thick. Day-old bread torn into rough chunks. Olive oil, malt vinegar, a pinch of salt. Leave it 5 minutes and observe the transformation. The bread absorbs the tomato juice and oil and becomes something altogether different, soft and almost yielding, reshaped without any heat or effort at all. The tomatoes surrender their sweetness into every surface they touch. What you end up eating tastes like considerably more thought was applied than actually was, which is the mark of food shaped by cooks rather than food technologists. British soldiers encountered versions of this in Italy after the war and carried the idea quietly home. It spread as tomatoes became affordable through the 1950s. A ripe tomato costs almost nothing. Stale bread is free because it was yesterday's loaf. The modern food industry has no interest in meals assembled from what is already on the turn. There is no margin to extract from it. 2 crackers, a wedge of cheddar, and the knowledge that simple and sufficient have never been opposites. Number 5. Cheese on crackers with celery. 2 cream crackers, a wedge of mature cheddar, 2 sticks of celery, 2 minutes to arrange, eaten deliberately. This combination appeared in NHS nutritional literature throughout the 1960s as the recommended evening meal for older adults, and every element of that recommendation holds as firmly today. Celery supports gut motility, which slows with age and becomes a persistent source of discomfort that most people never connect to the right cause. Cheddar delivers calcium in a form the body processes well. The crackers release energy gradually through the night rather than producing the blood sugar spike that refined snack foods create before dropping you sharply. No cooking, nothing to time, monitor, or clean up. The only genuine question is why this vanished from British dinner tables. The answer is that nobody in the food industry could find a way to profit sufficiently from it. Simpler still, and the method that hospital matrons trusted above every other. Number 4. Egg in a cup. Lower an egg carefully into a teacup, fill with boiling water. Rest a saucer across the top. 4 minutes. Eat from the cup with a teaspoon and strips of toast for dipping. Hospital matrons taught this to every patient being discharged into solitary living because it required no equipment beyond what every kitchen already contained, produced a reliably cooked egg without fail, and left almost nothing to clean. The cup held warmth longer than any plate. It was recommended not as a shortcut, but as a genuinely considered method for people whose hands shook, whose energy was depleted, and whose belief in their own capability in the kitchen had slowly worn away. That erosion of confidence is the real barrier, not cost, not the effort itself. The quiet, accumulated sense that a proper meal for one person is not worth the trouble. It always is. That is what this meal was designed to say. The next one will feel like a secret hiding in plain sight for decades. Number 3. Cold meat with pickle and bread. Whatever remained from a Sunday joint, sliced cold with a doorstep of bread and a generous spoonful of Branston pickle. The Sunday roast stretched across the week was not sacrificed in any form. It was a strategy. One piece of silverside or a modest chicken, cooked once, became several evenings requiring nothing beyond a knife, a plate, and the pickle jar that permanently occupied the same shelf. Modern food culture frames leftovers as a problem to manage. That generation understood them as the whole point. A cold supper demands nothing of the hob, which is not a trivial consideration on evenings when remaining upright any longer. The necessary already feels like too much. The acetic acid in Branston supports iron uptake from the meat in ways the body registers whether or not the mind connects them. And then came the real staple, the one district nurses passed between themselves by word of mouth for decades. Number 2. Pilchards in tomato sauce on toast. Larger than sardines, more substantial by weight, and sold pre-seasoned in tomato sauce so the meal arrives essentially ready. Fork them directly from the tin onto warm, buttered bread. The bones dissolve entirely in the canning process, contributing calcium without any texture to notice. District nurses called this the pensioner's friend, and the description was not patronizing. It was earned. No preparation required, shelf life measured in years, nutritional value exceeding most hot dishes at 3 times the outlay. The food industry held no profitable angle on a tin of Pilchards, so it simply stopped promoting them. That disappearance from public view was a commercial decision, not a dietary one. Worth knowing today, Aldi and Lidl stock tinned Pilchards for around 89 pence with no loyalty scheme, no digital account, no minimum spend attached. At a time when many older adults are being quietly excluded from supermarket discount programs by the app-based requirements they cannot navigate, a straightforward price on a physical tin matters more than it ought to, and now the one that costs the least, demands the least, and somehow carries the most. Number 1. Bread, butter, and a pot of tea. In 2026, this barely sounds like a meal. In the 1950s, it was a recognized supper, and the people who ate it understood something it took the rest of us half a century and a public health deterioration to rediscover. A thick slice of good bread with real butter pressed into every corner. A pot of tea brewed in the pot, not a bag dragged through a mug and discarded. Eaten at a table without the television competing for the same silence. The butter delivers the nutrients that 3 decades of low-fat orthodoxy stripped from the national diet, the ones the body needs to absorb minerals, maintain bone density, and keep immunity functioning. The bread provides steady energy. The tea offers something no clinical label has ever successfully quantified. Research into how isolated older adults eat found consistently that those who sat down to a proper place setting, regardless of what was on the plate, showed markedly better outcomes than those who skipped or grazed standing up. Sitting down to eat is the signal to your own body that the evening is worth marking, that you are still here, that the meal was worth making. Eat simply. Eat with attention. That was never the wrong approach. We were just sold a far more expensive version of the opposite. Try one of these this week. Just one. The kipper from the jug. The egg in the cup. The bread and butter your grandmother made on tired evenings. Then ask yourself whether eating simply felt like going without or like coming back to something you should never have left. These are not just recipes. They are proof that feeding yourself well was never as complicated as we were sold.